My ring finger will not stop shaking, and it is not the cold. There is a stone on it I did not buy, a weight I did not agree to. The last thing anyone remembers is easy to trust until it isn't. A glass of wine that tasted wrong. A man across the room who never once looked away. Then nothing. A gap where a night should be. Now there is a diamond catching the light like it has been waiting all morning just to be seen. And somewhere in this house, a voice already knows my name. If you've ever woken up inside a decision you don't remember making, you already know how this feels. Stay. This one is for you. The sheets are wrong before eyes even open. Too heavy. Too smooth. The kind of smooth that costs money. Home has a coffee stain shaped like Florida on its comforter. And this one smells like cedar and something floral, unfamiliar and expensive. And that wrongness settles into the body before the mind catches up to it. Sitting up too fast is a mistake. The room tilts, then steadies into focus, and none of it belongs to me. Floor-to-ceiling windows. A skyline nobody recognizes, all glass and distance, lit grey with early morning. A dresser carved from wood so dark it looks wet. And on the third finger of the left hand, a ring heavy enough to notice before the pounding in the skull even registers. Holding it up to the window light tells its own story. Not a chip. Not a promise ring some law school boy bought on a payment plan. Old money jewelry. The kind passed down, not the kind proposed with on a Tuesday. The mouth is dry in a way that has nothing to do with wine. Building the night backward takes effort. A bar. Low light. The kind that makes everyone look like they're keeping a secret. A drink someone else ordered. The bartender's eyes flicking toward a man at the end of the counter before he set it down. Strange, at the time. Easy enough to decide not to care. A man watching, patient, the way most men forgot how to years ago. Not scanning, not performing interest, just watching, like he already knew how the night would end, and was simply waiting for everyone else to catch up. After that, a door where the memory should be. Just a door, and nothing on the other side of it. Standing up, the floor is cold against bare feet. Real wood, not the laminate this life is used to. And crossing a bedroom the size of an entire apartment turns up nothing useful. A robe on a chair that isn't mine. A phone charging on the nightstand that also isn't mine. Screen dark, no passcode prompt. Left there like it was meant to be found. The hallway outside is worse. Marble underfoot. Cold enough to sting. Portraits lining the wall of people who look like they've never once been told no. You're awake! Turning too fast means one hand goes flat against the wall for balance. A woman stands a few feet off, older, dressed like staff in a house that clearly has staff, her expression arranged into something professionally unreadable. Where am I? The voice that comes out is smaller than intended. You should speak with Caleb, she says, like the name is supposed to mean something. I don't know a Caleb. I don't know where my clothes are. I don't know where I am. Pulse thuds loud enough to feel in the throat. I want my phone, my real one. He's in the East Room. He asked to be told the moment you woke. Not one question gets answered. She simply turns and walks, expecting to be followed. And following happens anyway, because staying alone in a stranger's hallway feels worse than whatever waits at the end of it. The East Room has windows on 3 sides, and a man standing at the center of them, like the light was built around him, instead of the other way around. Pale hair pulled back, a suit that fits too well to be anything but tailored. No phone in hand, no paper, nothing to fill the silence. Just stillness, the kind people practice for a very long time. He turns at the sound of footsteps in the doorway, and something in his face shifts. Not surprise, recognition. Good, he says. You're up. Who are you? Steadier this time. Why does your housekeeper think I need to talk to you? Why am I wearing a ring I've never seen before? My name is Caleb. Slow, deliberate, like he's giving time to catch something that will matter later. And that ring isn't new. You put it on yourself, last night, in front of witnesses. The floor doesn't move, but it feels like it does. That's not funny. I'm not trying to be funny. I would remember getting married. The word barely applies to this room, this man, this morning, and comes out anyway. I don't drink like that. I don't black out. I don't wake up next to strangers wearing jewelry I can't afford. You didn't drink like that, he says. You were given something, not by me. A pause. Small, deliberate. By someone who wanted last night to happen exactly the way it did. Calling that a lie should be easy. The mouth opens to do it. But there's a stillness in the way he watches. No performance in it at all. And something old and well used. Something that survived 3 years of watching men lie beautifully in courtrooms. Recognizes the difference between sincerity performed and sincerity that simply doesn't bother performing. Show me. The demand comes out steady. Whatever you think happened, show me. He doesn't reach for a phone. He reaches for something on the table beside him instead. A folder, thick. The kind of thick that means paperwork was already finished, while a stranger slept off a drug she never agreed to. There's a ceremony, he says. Recorded. There's also a document, binding under law, older than the country you live in, that neither of us can undo by pretending it didn't happen. Undo it anyway. I can't. Something almost like regret moves across his face, there and gone. Neither can you. Not without consequences you aren't ready to hear yet. Running would make sense. Some part of this body, the part that spent 3 years learning exactly how binding a binding document actually is, knows the door is right there. The feet don't move. Then tell me the consequences. The words come out level. All of them. Right now. He studies the room's newest occupant for a long moment, like recalculating something, like a question just got answered that was never asked out loud. Sit down, he says. This is going to take longer than you want it to. Standing wins. But leaving doesn't happen either. And that, more than the ring, more than the marble floor or the folder in his hands, is the detail that should be terrifying and somehow isn't. Getting dressed comes next, not sitting. Something about the way he says it, careful, almost apologetic, makes clear the folder on the table is the smallest problem in this house. The dress waiting on the bed an hour later belongs to no one's old life. Deep green, the kind of green that costs more per yard than a month's rent, and pinned to it, a note in handwriting not yet recognizable but soon will be. Court convenes at noon. Wear this. Say nothing you don't have to. Holding it to the window light brings back closing arguments written at 2 a.m, the ones where every word had to survive a room built to find the crack in it. No one knew then that those nights were practice for this one. There are rules. Caleb's voice comes from the doorway, his eyes not quite landing, like he already knows what the dress will do to a room, and would rather not watch it happen twice. You don't speak unless spoken to. You don't touch anyone who hasn't offered first. And whatever they say to provoke you, and they will try, let it pass through you like it never landed. That's not advice, that's a leash. It's survival. His eyes finally land. My court has never accepted an outsider before. They will be looking for a reason to say you don't belong. Give them nothing. Telling him about 3 years spent being underestimated by rooms full of men who thought a woman couldn't hold a room, stays unsaid. Being underestimated is the only weapon left this morning, and he doesn't need to know it's loaded. The court is not what anyone pictured. No throne, no theatre. Just a long hall with a ceiling that disappears into shadow, and a floor so polished it throws back a reflection, pale, composed, lying through its teeth. Caleb's hand finds the small of the back walking in, light, deliberate, the kind of touch that means nothing and everything depending on who's watching. Everyone is watching. A woman peels away from the crowd before the room is even half crossed. Young, dressed in black, poured on like a second skin, moving with a stillness that quiets the room around her without a raised voice at all. Ileana, Caleb says, and something in his tone flattens. Careful. A warning. I only came to meet her. Ileana's eyes travel slow, unhurried, the way you'd read a document already suspected of fraud. The human girl. I have to say, Caleb, I expected someone more. Memorable. I'm standing right here. The words are out before the rules from an hour ago finish echoing. Ileana smiles like exactly the reaction she wanted just arrived. She speaks. How refreshing. She has a name, Caleb says, his hand tightening slightly. Not a warning this time. Something closer to bracing. Does she know why she's here? Ileana's gaze doesn't move. Does she know what she's standing in the middle of? Or did you simply hand her a ring and let her assume this was romance? The room goes very quiet. Pulse thuds louder than it should, and underneath it, something colder. The specific, familiar chill of standing in front of a jury that decided against the defendant before a single word got spoken. Every version of a woman who has stood in a room like this one, outmatched on paper, and won anyway, rises to the surface at once. I know exactly what I'm standing in the middle of. The voice does the thing it used to do in a courtroom. Calm, unbothered. The voice of someone who already won and is simply waiting for everyone else to catch up. I also know a woman who has to introduce herself by insulting the competition usually isn't as secure in her position as she'd like people to believe. Something flickers across Ileana's face. Not anger. Recalculation. Careful, she says. Quieter now. Humans who talk like that in this hall don't usually last very long. Then it's a good thing, Caleb says, stepping half a pace forward, angling his body so Ileana has to look past him to keep looking at all. That she isn't just human. She's my wife. Address her the way you'd address me, or not at all. His voice never rises. It doesn't have to. Ileana's expression closes like a door, and she inclines her head, just barely, before turning back into the crowd, like the conversation never happened. Nothing moves for a second. Something braced this whole time, coiled tight and ready to absorb a hit, doesn't quite unclench, but it loosens. Enough to notice shoulders have been sitting somewhere near the ears since walking in. He didn't have to do that. The old habit of cataloguing every kindness as a debt owed later waits to start counting. It doesn't start. Letting that be strange without examining it too closely turns out to be its own kind of relief. If this awakened something already carried but never had a name for, the ache of standing in a room built to make someone feel small, and finding the nerve to stand there anyway, there are others sitting with the same feeling right now. Easy to lose track of a story like this one if you let it slip by. Neither of them speaks again until the car, the city sliding past in long ribbons of light, and the silence between them isn't the careful, managed silence from the morning. It's looser. It doesn't need filling. You didn't have to step in. Watching his reflection in the glass is easier than watching him directly. I had it handled. I know. A pause, long enough to seem like the end of it. I did it anyway. Why? He takes his time answering, and the question is allowed to sit there, unrushed, the way a witness gets left with silence, until deciding whether to fill it with truth or something safer. Because watching her try to make you small, he says finally, made me want to burn the whole hall down. That isn't something I've felt in a very long time. Maybe ever. The air in the car goes very still. Tires hiss on wet pavement. The heater hums faintly. Breath slows more than it has any right to given what just got said out loud without armor around it. That's the first true thing you've said to me. An accusation, meant as one. It doesn't come out like one. I know that too, he says, and doesn't look away. 3 weeks pass, uncounted. That's the part that scares anyone paying attention, how easily counting stopped. A whole career got built on counting things. Hours billed, precedents cited, exceptions in a contract that exist for one specific reason and no other. Keeping score used to be second nature. Somewhere between the court hall and this house, it simply stopped mattering. Mornings have a shape now. Caleb is always awake first, which shouldn't surprise anyone anymore, though it did the first few times. Coffee waits downstairs made the exact way it's liked. Too strong, no sugar, which means somewhere along the way, someone watched closely enough to know that without asking. Nobody has watched this closely in a long time. Calling it staff-level attentiveness works for about 4 seconds each morning before the excuse gives out. Tonight the housekeeper is off, and the kitchen belongs to the two of them, which apparently means Caleb cooks, not something the folder full of legal terms ever prepared anyone for. You didn't strike me as a man who owns an apron, leaning in the doorway, watching him move through the kitchen like decades of practice live in his hands. I didn't strike you as a lot of things. He doesn't turn around. A knife moves through something green, precise, unhurried. You've been recalculating me since the courtroom, since before that. Closer now, closer than intended. Close enough to catch rosemary and something underneath it that isn't food at all. Colder, older. You're not what the paperwork said you'd be. Neither are you. Dinner happens at the counter instead of the table that seats 20, and has never, as far as anyone can tell, held more than 2. He talks about the first century of his life like a story about someone he used to know, careful, a little rueful, and laughter arrives before there's time to register the sound. Real laughter, not the practiced thing performed in courtrooms and family dinners for years, the kind built to seem easy when it isn't. He stops mid-sentence, watching like something remarkable just happened. What? Nothing. A shake of the head, though the watching doesn't stop, and something unguarded sits in his face that wasn't there 3 weeks ago in the hall. I just haven't heard that before. Not the real one. Silence follows, because a man noticing the difference between 2 kinds of laughter isn't something anyone knows how to answer, not after years spent making sure most people never learned there was a difference at all. The phone rings before an answer has to be found. Caleb answers without moving from the counter, and his whole posture changes in the space of 1 word. Not fear exactly. Something colder, more controlled. The specific stillness of a man doing math he doesn't like the answer to. When? He says. A pause. Where? Another pause, longer, and his eyes lift to find mine across the kitchen, closing like a door swinging shut on instinct. He hangs up without a goodbye. What? Sharper than intended, because whatever just happened landed on both of them, even if only one side understood the words. Nothing that concerns tonight. Too fast. The kind of fast that means something already got decided not to explain. Pushing would be the instinct to follow. It doesn't get followed, because old habits built over years of depositions know the fastest way to lose information is demanding it before someone's ready to give it up. The plate gets attention instead. So does his. The silence that settles afterward isn't the comfortable kind from 20 minutes earlier. It has an edge now, and both of us feel it, and neither says so. An hour later, after the plates are cleared and the house has gone quiet, he finds the terrace. No plan to be out here existed. The heir just needed to not have a phone call sitting inside it. I told myself this would stay simple, he says, coming to stand close, sleeve brushing against the arm beside him, neither one pulling away from it. A performance. An arrangement with an end date circled on a calendar somewhere. And now? He goes quiet long enough to draw eyes away from the city lights below, and something new sits in his face. Not from the courtroom, not from the kitchen, nothing seen in any of the careful hours between. It looks almost like surrender, It looks like a man setting down something carried so long he forgot the weight of it. Now I catch myself doing the math on days left, he says, and it doesn't feel like relief anymore. It feels like losing something before I've even had the chance to call it mine. The air off the water is sharp enough to raise the skin on bare arms, and no move gets made to cover them. Something in this moment deserves to be simple and physical and true, because everything else about it is neither. You said this was temporary. Keeping the voice even costs more than it should. You said 18 months. You said end date. I know what I said. He turns fully now. Nothing careful left in the way he's looking. Nothing performed for a court or a housekeeper, or anyone at all. I don't think about it that way anymore. I haven't for a while now. I just didn't have the nerve to say it until tonight forced my hand. That phone call comes back to mind. His face, closing over the second he hung up, and no explanation offered since. Easier this way, if the wanting had already stopped. That's not an answer to what just happened on the phone. Quiet, but it lands. No, he agrees. It isn't. Neither one moves. The city hums below, indifferent. And somewhere behind his eyes, a door that opened for one honest sentence has already started closing around whatever isn't ready to be told yet. Sleep doesn't come easily after that. The phone call runs on repeat with no transcript to check, only the cadence of a voice to work from, and no verdict at the end of it. An envelope sits on the breakfast plate 3 mornings later, and it takes a second too long to register the wrongness of that. Nobody puts mail on a plate. Someone wanted it to be the first thing a hand touched. No return address. A name written in handwriting never seen before. Elegant, unhurried, the kind of penmanship that belongs to someone with centuries to practice it. Opening it happens standing at the counter, because sitting down would give it more ceremony than it deserves. One line. He has let 3 wives die keeping his secrets. Ask him about the second one. The paper doesn't shake. That registers with a strange, clinical distance, the way calm gets noticed in a deposition right before the question that's going to matter. Hands stay steady. The stomach does something else entirely, low and cold, like water swallowed from underneath ice. No calling out for him. No running to find Caleb in the kitchen where the housekeeper might overhear. The paper gets folded along its original crease, precise, tucked into a pocket, and the coffee he made too strong the exact way it's liked gets finished instead, hot enough to hurt a little going down. A career built on not reacting to the first version of a story pays off here. The first telling is never the whole one, but there's a difference between not reacting and not feeling it, and this one settles into the chest like something with weight, something going nowhere on its own. 3 wives. Not girlfriends, not arrangements, wives, plural, before this one, and nobody in this house has said the word once. He finds the terrace again that evening, same spot, same view, and whatever's different in the posture must read clearly, because he stops a few feet short instead of closing the distance. Someone reached me directly. No waiting for the question to form. Not you, not the house, me. His face barely changes. That's what tells the most. The practiced stillness of a man who has had this exact conversation before and already knows how it goes. Show me, he says. The paper changes hands instead of an answer, and he reads one line already memorized a dozen times. Something behind his eyes going very quiet and very far away. That's true. Not a question. Not a denial. Just the flat, unadorned weight of a fact, finally set down instead of protected. The air off the water is colder tonight, sharp against bare wrists, and it stays that way, because something honest touching skin matters even if it's only weather. Tell me, all of it, not the version that makes it easier to hear. He waits long enough to make refusal seem possible, then he starts, and his voice carries none of its usual polish, none of the courtroom calm worn like a second suit. Two came before. The first left before things turned dangerous, walked away with her life and nothing else, and he never blamed her for it, not once. The second didn't leave in time. A rival house reached her the way this one just reached the kitchen counter, not with violence first, with information, with the specific kind of fear that makes a person start making mistakes. She went looking for answers alone instead of asking him. She found the wrong room at the wrong hour. "I wasn't fast enough," he says, the words coming out like something physical, something costing him to set down. "I've spent longer than you'd believe replaying the version where I was." Reaching for him doesn't happen yet. Wanting to reach for him does. Some part of this needs to sit inside the fact a moment longer before comfort blurs its edges. So when the phone rang 3 nights ago, that was this. Already happening again. Yes. And you were going to keep doing what you did with her. Manage it quietly. Protect me from the shape of it instead of the thing itself. Yes, he says again. And this time no defense rides underneath it. No version of himself trying to sound reasonable. Just the truth. Offered without armor for the first time. Because the last time I told a wife everything, she went looking for the rest of it herself. And it got her killed. I decided silence was safer. I was wrong to decide that for you, instead of with you. The stillness that follows isn't comfortable. It isn't meant to be. Pulse thuds in the ears. The wind off the water the only sound for a long moment. And the mind stops reaching for the next clever thing to say, sitting instead inside what just got handed over. This isn't a story about jealousy or old ghosts. This is a story about what it costs to stand this close to him. In numbers, in blood, in women who came before and didn't survive the choosing. I need you to understand something, steadier than expected, which is its own kind of honesty. I'm not her. I'm not going to go looking for the truth alone because you decided I couldn't handle it whole. But I also can't unknow what that letter told me. There isn't a version of this where I stay and pretend the risk isn't real. I know. He says it like a man watching something slip, that he already knows can't be held onto by wanting it hard enough. I'm not going to ask you to pretend. The city hums beneath the terrace, indifferent as always, and standing there in the cold with a truth in one pocket that carries a body count. The shape of the choice made the morning that ring went on becomes clear for the first time. The letter never comes up again after that night. Not avoidance, exactly. More like the way a bruise stops getting touched once its exact edges are known. The risk has a shape now, and choosing it once doesn't require announcing the choice out loud every day after. 2 weeks pass, in a kind of grace nobody quite trusts. Tonight is nothing. That's what makes it worth remembering later, how ordinary it is. Rain against the windows, soft, unhurried. Caleb reading something in a language nobody else recognizes. Glasses on, which undoes something every single time, because it makes centuries of careful control look, for a moment, like a man doing homework. A case file from the old life sits open on the other end of the couch, out of habit more than need, and 20 minutes pass without a word between them, no edge anywhere in the silence. Staying inside this exact hour forever seems possible. Letting that thought land fully, without flinching from how much it means, feels like its own kind of risk. The first sound is small, a window somewhere on the lower floor, the kind of small, precise break that isn't wind, and isn't an animal, and isn't anything that belongs in a house this quiet. Caleb is on his feet before the sound finishes registering as wrong. That's the detail that lands hardest. How fast his whole body changes shape. How the man reading in glasses disappears in under a second, replaced by something older and colder. Stay behind me. No warmth left in his voice. Do not go toward the noise. Do you understand me? Understanding happens. Listening only half does, because some old, stubborn habit has never once managed to stand still while a situation decides itself without input. The hallway lights die all at once, every bulb, and the dark that follows isn't ordinary dark. It carries weight, a wrongness against the skin like standing too close to an open freezer. Voices rise from downstairs, low, moving fast, more than one, more than two, none belonging to anyone who works in this house. Caleb doesn't wait for them to arrive. He moves down to meet it, and following happens anyway, because staying alone in a black hallway is worse than whatever waits at the bottom of the stairs, and some things only get learned when the choice sits directly in front of a person. The fight isn't like anything in half-believed childhood stories. It's fast, and quiet, and uglier than that. More like watching two forces of weather collide in a space too small to hold them. Caleb moves in ways never seen before, and still one of them gets past him, close enough for the air itself to change, before the danger even registers fully. Someone steps between us. Not Caleb. The driver from twice-weekly court appearances, whose name only got learned a month ago, whose quiet loyalty never once asked to be noticed. He goes down hard, and the sound that follows isn't loud but is somehow the loudest thing ever heard, wet and final, and hands are already pressing down on a wound with no training to understand it, heat pouring out between fingers faster than a single useful thought can form. He needs a doctor. Now. He needs... The voice doesn't sound familiar. It sounds like someone standing very far outside her own body, narrating what her hands are doing, because her mind hasn't caught up yet. I have him. Caleb's voice. Close now, controlled in a way that visibly costs him. Zoe, look at me. I need you to move. Now. The stairs after that don't stay in memory. Cold air hits like something solid outside. The car. Caleb's hands steady on the wheel, while the rest of him is anything but. One look back at a house with smoke starting to show pale against the dark windows, and a strange, detached thought arrives. The shape of every room in that house never even got learned. He gets us somewhere safe. No questions about where. No room left for a single new fact tonight. Hours later, in a house belonging to no one known, the stillness finally arrives and doesn't leave room for anything else. Sitting on the edge of an unfamiliar bed with someone else's blood dried under the fingernails, no crying happens, no shaking, and that absence scares more than tears would have. Caleb stands in the doorway, not entering, like he already knows what's about to be said, and is giving the room to say it without standing too close. He's alive, he says quietly. He's going to live. That's not the point. Looking down at both hands, instead of at him, because trusting the face to hide anything right now feels impossible. A man almost died tonight because he was standing where I was supposed to be standing. That's what protection means in my world. I told you that from the beginning. You told me the word, steadier than it feels, which is its own kind of dishonesty. I don't think I understood what the word actually costs until I had someone's blood on my hands. He doesn't argue. That's what undoes everything else. The fact that he simply lets the silence hold what just got said, instead of trying to talk his way out of the shape of it. I need to go. The words land in the room like something final, something building under the surface, since a folded letter first appeared on a breakfast plate. Not tonight. Not dramatically. I just need to be somewhere that isn't inside this every single day. I know, he says. No fight in it. No argument. Just a kind of tired, complete understanding that somehow makes it worse. I'm not going to stop you. Whatever still lives standing 3 feet away from him, in a stranger's borrowed room, stays unnamed. Because naming it now would only make leaving harder. Gathering the little there is to gather comes next. Walking out into a night gone finally quiet comes after that. No looking back at the doorway, because his face standing in it is already too familiar a picture to carry all the way to the car. The apartment feels smaller than remembered. The square footage hasn't changed. That much is obvious. But shoulders keep catching on door frames once moved through without thinking, like the body forgot how to fit inside a life this size. 5 weeks. Rounding it up to 6 keeps getting refused out of some stubborn need to deny it's become a clean number. Work resumes. Emails get answered. Most mornings the mirror gets told this is what getting a life back looks like, and most mornings that almost gets believed. The ring came off weeks ago, though it never made it anywhere hard to find again. It sits on the edge of the bathroom sink like a question still waiting on an answer. Emma, sharp-tongued, the only person who's earned the right to say what she actually thinks, corners the coffee machine on a Tuesday, indistinguishable from every other Tuesday. You're doing the thing again. What thing? Staring at your phone like it owes you an apology it's never going to send. A mug gets handed over, unasked for. You left him 5 weeks ago. You don't look like a woman who escaped something. You look like a woman who's still waiting for someone to come find her. No argument follows, because arguing would mean admitting she's right out loud, and that admission isn't ready to be heard in this voice yet. The call comes that night, and something already knows, before answering, that whatever's on the other end will rearrange something not yet finished rearranging on its own terms. Not Caleb's voice. Iliena's, cold and precise as ever. None of the courtroom venom from that first day. Just fact, laid out flat like weather. He held the line at the border house alone, she says, against 3 of them. He told his people to fall back and protect the families instead of him. A pause, and something in it sounds almost like respect, grudging and unfamiliar coming from her. He's alive, barely. I thought you'd want to hear it from someone, rather than not at all. The phone stays warm against an ear long after she's gone, standing very still in the kitchen, hands finding the edge of the counter, and gripping the way a person grips something when the floor decides to move without asking permission first. A man reading in glasses on a rainy night, undone by something as small as homework, comes back all at once. Blood on the hands that wasn't his own comes back too, and this particular cold feels worse than that night did, imagining what almost happened instead. No decision gets made to go. That's the part turned over for years afterward, trying to locate the exact second it happened, never quite finding it, because there wasn't a decision. There was just a coat and keys, and a version of this story that stopped negotiating with its own wanting somewhere between the phone call and the door. The house looks different in daylight, scarred in places once remembered whole, and none of it matters, because the house isn't what's being looked at. He's on his feet when found, which surprises more than it should given everything Eliana said. Bandaged, moving slower than remembered, but upright, and the look on his face at the sight of a familiar figure in the doorway carries none of its usual composure. For the first time since a courtroom 3 weeks into this whole thing, he looks like a man who has genuinely run out of armor. You shouldn't have come, he says, and it isn't a rejection. It's the sound of a man protecting the last thing he has left to protect. I know exactly what I'm walking back into. The voice stays even, though it costs everything left to keep it that way. I'm not confused about the risk this time. I'm choosing it with my eyes open, the same way I chose that ring the first morning. Except this time, nobody drugged the wine to get me here. Something in his face breaks open at that, quiet and complete. What happens next isn't something told, it's something watched. Standing among women who know exactly what it costs to choose a life like this one with eyes fully open. Some of them are still fighting for the version of this ending that hasn't arrived yet. Staying close to a story like theirs means being there when it finally does. 2 days later, in the same long hall with the ceiling that disappears into shadow, both families stand on opposite sides of a floor, polished enough to hold every face looking back at itself. A mother stands there too, small and fierce in a room built for people twice her height, refusing to let go of one hand even once. Caleb stands at the center of it, and does something no man in his position has ever been seen doing. He speaks the words releasing every political claim his court has ever held over this marriage. Every clause written to bind a wife to him for the sake of bloodline, instead of the two people actually standing inside it. He gives up the leverage, publicly, in front of everyone who ever doubted she belonged in that hall. "I am not choosing her because the law demands it," he says, his voice carrying to every corner without needing to rise. "I never was. I am asking her, in front of everyone who matters to either of our families, to choose me back." The silence that follows has weight, but not the cold kind from that first day in court. It's the kind holding its breath, waiting to see what happens next. A mother's eyes. Ilyena's, unreadable as ever, but not unkind now. Not anymore. Caleb's, standing there with nothing left to hide behind. No folder, no contract, no 18 months circled on a calendar. Yes, the word costs nothing at all, which is how the truth of it finally gets confirmed. The families don't embrace. Not exactly. That would be too much too soon. But they stand together for the first time since any of this began. Two sides of one long table finally facing the same direction. A mother's grip loosens, not from letting go, but because holding on so tightly stops being necessary. The woman who woke up in a bed that wasn't hers, furious, disoriented, certain she'd been handed a life never asked for, doesn't live here anymore. Something got built out of what was left after the fear burned off, and it belongs to no one else now. Chosen twice, once by accident, and once on purpose, and only the second one ever really counted. If something in this story found its way under your skin and stayed there, that feeling has a home. There are women gathered in that same feeling, coming back to sit with stories like this one, whenever they need to remember what it costs, and what it's worth, to choose a life on purpose.